Welcome back to Question Everything, an equestrian podcast. I'm Veronica. Today we're talking about something that gets mentioned constantly in the horse world, but isn't always clearly defined. Trust. We hear it all the time. This horse trusts me, or you need to build trust. But what does trust actually look like from the horse's perspective? And how is it built or broken in the small, everyday interactions we have with them? First, let's just ask, what is trust? In human psychology, trust is often described as a sense of predictability and safety within a relationship. Not perfection, not constant success, but a general sense that what happens next is somewhat understandable, the environment is stable, and responses from the other individual are consistent. When those pieces are present, trust tends to grow. And when they're not, it can become fragile. So, predictability. For horses, predictability plays a major role in how they experience the world. They are highly attuned to patterns. They learn through association, noticing what leads to pressure, what leads to release, what leads to reward, and what seems random. When cues are clear and consistent, the horse can begin to anticipate outcomes. And anticipation, when it's accurate, often reduces stress. Research in equine behavior shows that predictability in handling and training is associated with lower stress responses and more stable behavior patterns. Not because the horse is quote-unquote obedient, but because the environment makes sense. Let's look at the human side of emotional regulation. Trust isn't just shaped by what we ask the horse to do. It's also shaped by how we show up while asking. In human psychology, emotional regulation is the ability to remain relatively steady in our responses. And it's strongly linked to relationship stability. And while horses don't interpret emotions the same way humans do, they are extremely sensitive to tension, timing, changes in pressure, and inconsistency in cues. So if a handler's response shifts unpredictably, sometimes soft, sometimes abrupt, sometimes delayed, the horse receives mixed information. Not because the person is doing something wrong, but because variability exists. And variability can create uncertainty. Consistency is one of the foundations of clear communication. If a cue sometimes means go forward, and sometimes means nothing, and sometimes is paired with increased pressure, the horse just has to guess. And guessing often leads to tension, hesitation, or what we might interpret as resistance. But from a learning perspective, it may simply be a lack of clarity. Not defiance or stubbornness, just uncertainty. So what breaks trust? In human relationships, trust isn't usually broken by one moment. It's shaped over time, through repeated experiences. And the same appears to be true in horse-human interactions. Moments that can challenge trust might include unpredictability, overwhelming stimuli without relief, unclear or conflicting signals, or a lack of consistency in outcomes. Again, not as a judgment, just as observable patterns that influence behavior. So what about repair after trust is ruptured? One of the most important ideas from relationship psychology is this: ruptures happen in all relationships. Miscommunication happens, timing is off, something is confusing or overwhelming. The presence of rupture doesn't define the relationship. What matters is what happens next, and that is repair. In human psychology, repair involves returning to a state of predictability and responsiveness. And while horses don't conceptualize repair the same way humans do, we can still see behavioral shifts when clarity returns. when cues become consistent again, when pressure is applied and realized in understandable ways, when the environment stabilizes. The horse can reorient. Learning continues. And trust is a process. So maybe trust isn't a fixed state. Maybe it's not something we either have or don't have. Maybe it's something that is continuously shaped by clarity, consistency, predictability, and the ability to return to those things when they're lost. So just a little bit of reflection. There's also something here for us. Because in human psychology, when we feel uncertain or challenged, it's easy to become defensive, rigid, or closed off to new information. But curiosity offers another path. Not because we've done anything wrong, but because there may always be more to understand. So instead of asking, does my horse trust me? Maybe we ask, what patterns am I creating? What is predictable and what isn't? And how might that be shaping this relationship? Because trust may not come from one big moment, but from many small, consistent ones. If something in this episode gave you a new perspective or a question to sit with, that's a good place to be. So keep observing, keep learning, and as always, question everything.